Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of Breaking History. I'm going to be soon joined by my co-host, Gordon, Ghost of Base Patrick Henry. But until he jumps into the show, I'm going to begin, as we always do, with a word from today's main sponsor, Goldco. So, without further ado, introducing Goldco. Nope, that didn't work. There we are. Is your wealth ready for Trump's next wave? Gold loves a Trump headline, and it's soaring. From the day he first took office, gold prices have climbed, gaining nearly $400 per ounce since his second term began. Why? Gold thrives in uncertainty. It's a time-tested safe haven, immune to government meddling, a shield against inflation, and a proven way to protect your wealth when markets wobble. With Trump's second term heating up, will gold smash new records in 2025? Nobody knows how high it could go, but smart investors aren't waiting to find out. Take control today. You could even qualify for up to 10% bonus-free silver. Discover an IRS-approved way to diversify your savings with gold and silver, tax and penalty-free. Get your free gold and silver kit delivered straight to your door and learn how to safeguard your future. Visit badlandsgold.com to claim your kit and start building a stronger portfolio today. That's badlandsgold.com. Don't miss out. Hey, and there he is. Hey, Gordon, how are you doing?
Doing well. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the show.
Yeah, welcome to our digital room. So we have you and I were just chatting as we always do a little bit about some of the topics that we're looking at, and obviously right now there's an important General Assembly happening in New York. World leaders from all over have come down, except for Mahmoud Abbas, for obvious reasons. Wasn't allowed in. He had to speak on Zoom. That being said, Trump also met with Arab leaders and leaders of the broader Muslim world. I'd like to get your thoughts on that and some of the other developments. Interestingly enough as well, there's I think, a clash over what the new system is going to look like. Happening across Europe. We see good old European insanity, clawing forth as it must, saber rattling and pushing for unnecessary conflict with Russia, ever more foolishly. So we could talk about some of that, some of what's gone down, and drone attacks over Poland and weird Russian planes for like 2 seconds flying into Estonia. That's causing somehow an international crisis. And then you've been looking at some developments around Eurasia too, and especially on the rail front. So of all of the things going on, and maybe even a word about some of the weirdness emerging around Charlie Kirk's murder, which again is, the more you look at it, the more strange this thing gets. Where would you like to begin today, Gordon?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, there's so much that's happening in the world right now that I think is so positive and like gets me excited about the future and the golden age. I mean, you can see it happening there, and I think maybe we should end the show there. Like maybe we'll land it with some of those developments.
Sure.
I talked about it on a couple of shows yesterday, so for some people it'll be a rerun, but there might be some new information we'll get into there, and getting your thoughts, of course, will be great. But yeah, I mean, there's also a lot of there's a lot of trepidation, and there's a lot of destabilizing things that are happening because of all this. And I think there were a lot of people who had rose-colored glasses on going into all this. They thought that with the election of Donald Trump in November, that was the end of it. That was the end of the fight, and that we won, and it was just going to be smooth sailing from there. And I never had that. Badlands actually caught kind of a lot of flack because we just never had that view of it. Our view was always that this is when things are only going to start. This is the start of like the next sequence of battles. And the answer is simple. I mean, from your research, you understand, like, we're up against something that is probably far older and far more powerful than we even realize. And they're not just going to give up their power. They're not just going to let us come in and decide things for ourselves and govern ourselves. This is going to be a fight. And
Yes.
I think that the assassination of Charlie Kirk is 100% tied to that. I think real quick, the notes on that, Kash Patel coming out the other day, and I think it was the day of his funeral service, saying that the FBI was not, or he was not satisfied with like where everything that's been presented publicly is, and they're still pursuing other leads, and they're still pursuing, the idea of a conspiracy, the idea that there might be other people involved. Like nothing is set in stone yet.
Yeah.
And it's also important to remind everyone that everything that is out there, quote unquote, officially so far, and I've gone and I've asked questions, and I've asked, I like the people who I know and I trust who are tracking this stuff very closely, which I am not necessarily. They've assured me that all of this information is coming from Utah. So it's the Utah's taking the lead, the Utah State Police, the Utah local authorities, the governor of Utah, like they're the ones running with this. And then the FBI is playing more of like a supporting role, which is typical in most investigations. That's typical. Usually when the FBI arrests people, a lot of times what it is it's actually the local authorities making the arrest with the FBI standing in the background, providing the information. So I think it's important to make that distinction. Now, again, that does not exonerate the FBI of anything. I still don't trust the FBI, and it's going to be hard for me to accept at face value pretty much anything that comes out from anybody at this point, because it's been such a shit show, for lack of a better word, of information. I was just listening to Steve Bannon's show, and there was a former Navy SEAL sniper who wasn't on there to talk about this, but Steve Bannon just asked him for his thoughts. And one of the things he pointed out, which is a piece of information that I hadn't considered yet, or I hadn't focused in on yet, the idea of the gun being broken down off the roof and then like him coming off the roof and putting it back together. I had already thought about that, but he kind of explained in more detail what like the problems were with it.
Yeah.
He understood that the gun that they claimed this kid used is very hard to break down. It's very hard.
Well, they said that it's very difficult to even trace where it came from, because the New York Post just ran this headline. It's a World War I era gun.
Yeah.
On top of that, what is, like, I didn't even realize that they were stretching that far as to try to come up with this kid having a World War I antique gun.
Yeah. Well, I think they're describing it as like grandpa's hunting rifle, like something like that, right? But and again, like I hadn't gotten into like the weeds and all this, because my general opinion of this whole thing is I don't even need to talk about bullet trajectories or anything like that. The whole story just stinks to me. The whole thing stinks. So I'll leave that to other sleuths to dig into the weeds. But I thought what this guy said was interesting. In order to break this gun down, you need a screwdriver. You need a screwdriver to that's one of the reasons. It's not like an AR-15 that you can just slide a few things and take it apart. You got to unscrew screws to break it down. And the screwdriver they found on the roof of the building. So like the assertion was originally that he left he went up there before the event, put the screwdriver up there, and then the screwdriver was waiting for him to break down the gun. The problem is that they found the gun fully assembled in the woods, and the screwdriver's back up on the roof. And again, you take a gun like that apart, there's a bolt action, the casing is going to fly out, and the thing was still chambered. That was the thing that I clued in on originally. I was like, wait, they're saying they took it apart and they put it back together, but the casing, but the original cartridge is still in the chamber. So again, the whole thing just seems,
it just smells.
It just reeks of bullshit, and there's no reason to believe any of it. And I adopt Chris Paul's worldview, which he's like, you don't have to adopt an opinion on any of this stuff. You can just sit back and observe. And this is one of those things where there's plenty of places where I am going to adopt an opinion, and I am going to have a thought. And this is one where I'm happy to sit back and just observe and see how it goes. But I'll also, I'll have my opinions and I'll dissect. I mean, my opinion is that I think that the leader in the clubhouse right now of who killed him would be who benefits the most. It would be, the Zionists. I think that's probably where I land right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, accumulating data, that's not a bad thing to do. And, keeping the mind flexible enough to not get locked in before an adequate amount of information can be brought to the surface is a really healthy thing. Not everyone, but it's so common that people want to reflexively jump to some crystallized right answer. It's like a comfort blanket we often have emotionally, that we want to hold on to something tangible with an absolute full answer. And oftentimes that's possible to get there, but it has to be earned, and it has to, before making that incision of where our judgment comes in, you want to really, really take in as much information and also be aware of as many narratives that are being spun for us by those very same artists of illusion that have been mastering the art of social engineering for a very long time and are quite good at sophistry. So we want to be aware of, like, also just taking account of the various narratives. And one thing that's come out that somebody shared with me just the other day, and I'm sure everybody or many people have seen this, but the producer of Charlie Kirk's show, who's also a spokesperson for TPUSA,
Colvin or whatever.
Yeah, I got his thing here. Colvin, exactly. He came out with the official message that I think is being endorsed as one of the dominant narratives now about why, because the ballistic experts were making the point that no, if everything was as we were told it is, and the bullet came in from the front, why was there no exit wound? Because scientifically, the laws of physics demand that there should have been an exit wound. And he writes, saying, don't worry about it. We figured it out. It was an act of God who made a miracle that turned Charlie's bones to steel, saving the lives of people behind him. And he literally says this. I want to address some of the discussion about the lack of an exit wound with Charlie. I'm usually not interested in delving into most of this kind of online chatter, and I apologize. This is somewhat graphic, but in this case, the fact that there wasn't an exit wound is probably another miracle, and I want people to know. I just spoke with the surgeon who worked on Charlie in the hospital. He said the bullet absolutely should have gone through, which is very normal for a high-powered, high-velocity round. I've seen wounds from this caliber many times, and they always just go through everything. This would have taken a moose or two down, an elk, etc. But it didn't go through. Charlie's body stopped it. I mentioned to his doctor that there were dozens of staff, students, and special guests standing directly behind Charlie on the other side of the tent, and he replied, it was an absolute miracle that someone else didn't get killed. His bone was so healthy and the density was so impressive that he's like the man of steel. It should have just gone through and through. It likely would have killed those standing right behind him too. In the end, the coroner did find the bullet just beneath the skin. Even in death, Charlie managed to save the lives of those around him. Remarkable, miraculous. I had to read that whole thing because it's insane. It's insane. It's crazy that people are actually buying this stuff up. And my God, sorry, go on.
Well, finish your thought, but I have some specific.
Well, I was going to say, because people's superstitious lack of mental rigor is being really exploited right now. And I got a little short 40-second clip from one of these mega churches. And this has been apparently going around where AI constructs of Charlie have been generated by a lot of these manipulative pastors to, just advance their own shitty agenda. And I'm going to play a clip pretty soon, just as far as like how, but not, I want to get your thoughts first.
Yeah. So I can cue that clip up. I don't know what the clip is. I haven't seen it, but I can probably cue it up pretty well. But first, I want to go back to the SEAL sniper who was on Bannon's show. This is not the first time I've heard this information, but I think he kind of he kind of summarized it very concisely. The 30-06 round that the 30 caliber round they're talking about, that was the bullet that killed him. And again, this, I don't think, as far as I know, this has not been confirmed by the FBI. I think this is what's been put out there by initial reports in like Utah or whatever. He describes it as the bullet that won World War II. This is just at the very end of Bannon's show that I was listening to. And he said there's such a surplus of it as a result of World War II. There was such a surplus across the U.S. that more animals, despite like our history and everything of hunting and gathering, in the colonial days, more animals have been taken down by that round in North America than any other round because of the surplus after World War II. And the military vets, CanCon and Alpha, have had plenty of from Badlands. I've had plenty of conversations with them. I've seen their shows on this. CanCon on Badlands Daily the other day pulled up a video of a guy shooting through, the synthetic equivalent of human flesh.
Yeah.
Where you can see through it. I mean, this round would have decapitated. If you get hit in the neck of this round the way that Charlie did, the way that it appears he got hit, this round would have like decapitated him. That's how powerful this round is. It would have blown his whole neck off. And his head would have been, I'm sorry to be graphic, but like his head would have been hanging off his body. Like that's very clear from watching like pork shoulders be shot with it, or, other synthetic materials be shot with it. It's not like a 22 where it's going in and not coming out the back. And then this idea, like the fact that Colvett put that out, the fact that his producer put that out is so suspect that you would put that out and be like, the doctor is telling you that it's a miracle. He's a man of steel. His body physically defied physics and stopped this round, which should have just blown him open in front of everybody, and it didn't. And queuing up your clip that you're going to play, there is a push now I've seen to canonize Charlie Kirk. There's a push now to canonize him, which means to officially declare him a saint under the church. And my understanding is the requirement for that is 2 miracles had to have occurred for him to be considered a saint. And so that would be one miracle. Like the kid said, or the guy said, this is a miracle. It's miraculous. This is literally a miracle. He stopped the bullet so nobody behind him got hit. Man, that is very suspicious in my mind. That just raises more questions than it does answers. But go ahead and play your clip.
Yeah, and just to add to that before I play the clip, there does seem to be some weird confluence between this Gnostic takeover. I mean, we know that Pope Francis was a oversaw Jesuit takeover. Now, the Catholic Church, the Vatican, has been clearly a target of infiltration for centuries, if not millennia. I would say since the very earliest start, there was already compromising things baked into the Catholic Church as an institution. Now, there's many good Catholic people. There's many good Catholic leaders over the years and the centuries. Many of them are fighting the Jesuits. Many of them are trying to ban the Order of Malta. That you've got. But that being said, we have had a major infiltration. And there does seem to be some effort to try to create this vision of Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, the Jesuit grand strategist. Have you heard of Pierre Teilhard de Chardin?
The name doesn't come to mind. He's
one of these high level figures within the Jesuit hierarchy, and I wrote an article on him, and I'll share it out. Actually, I'll put it under this video. But he was the founder of the idea of the noosphere and transhumanism. So he worked with Julian Huxley in the 1950s very closely. Julian Huxley, who set up the United Nations Education, Science, and Cultural Organization as the president of the Eugenics Society of Britain. Both of them together coined the term transhumanism. And he had this notion of this sort of, it was called this neo-Darwinian synthesis, or the new synthesis, that both Julian and Chardin were advancing. Chardin's objective was to fuse Darwinian view, like a Darwinian view of human nature, into theology, because they're incompatible. Like anybody who believes that human beings evolved in some, survival of the fittest doctrine with random mutations that generated, bigger claws to kill our enemies and to have more sex and to spread our genes, that doesn't mesh at all with the Christian or any Abrahamic religion, which has a very different idea of human beings with a soul being made divine in the image of God. That's a very different, incompatible idea. But his objective was to fuse it together. And he was like, So, as a Jesuit, a lot of what he put forth both inspired, ironically, this transhumanist agenda, which took on more of a religious coloring in the 60s, 70s. This idea that there would be some future singularity. He called it the Omega point. This imaginary future moment wherein synthetic technology and computing technology developed by human beings would become self-aware, right? And then that would generate some Christ consciousness, new agey moment in, the 21st century or something that would then either would involve human beings becoming a new species, merging with artificial technologies and things like that and AI. So right now it does seem like there is some weird nudging to try to create a sacredness out of the idea of AI. This kid, this 15-year-old video gamer who died of leukemia back in 2007, you probably just heard 2 weeks ago, he was made the patron saint of social media. And it's like they literally made this 15-year-old kid. I mean, good kid. Seems like a really good kid who was obsessed with demonology and things like that, and used social media to promote Catholicism. And then he died of leukemia. They made him literally a saint, saying that he had 3 miracles. One of the miracles being that he popularized Catholicism to young people, which is a miracle, apparently. And now you got this weird stuff too, where there does seem to be a stage being set to turn Charlie Kirk into a saint. On the one hand, which is weird as well, because Charlie Kirk wasn't Catholic, but then to also see these AI bots that are somehow being normalized, which I'll just play one example right here.
From the words of Charlie Kirk, I was so moved just to hear it between services. You're hearing something the first service didn't.
First, I want you to know I'm fine, not because my body is fine, but because my soul is secure in Christ. Death is not the end. It's a promotion. Don't waste 1 second mourning me. Double down on truth. Double down on courage. Double down on your faith and on your families. That is how you honor me. So dry your tears, pick up your cross, and get back in the fight. Do it with joy. Do it with strength. And never ever let evil think it won.
I love you so.
Look at the size of that crowd.
So satanic, dude. That's so satanic. I can't believe that they did that.
And it's happening in many churches too. This is not just that one particular church.
Yeah, it makes me so ashamed to be a Protestant to see that happening.
Dude, it's wicked. And honestly, it's something which I was I've been reading a lot of transcripts of many of these transhumanists from the 60s onward, including Elon Musk's. He gave some speeches at a World Government Summit in 2017, where he's going through the philosophy of this digitized soul, in that their idea has been, and this goes back again to the followers of Chaldin, who took a big part in Silicon Valley and imposed this weird theology that somehow our social media imprints are that's the substitute for our soul. So you don't need to actually have some relationship to some immaterial soul that doesn't mean much.
They can take your social media presence and then plug it into a algorithm that then generates.
Yeah, and they're like, that's your
AI
connection to the infinite. That's your connection to the eternal, is the imprint which will live on forever. And then maybe, increasingly we can talk to the imprint that lives on forever after we've uploaded your intelligence into AI that can
and then they can grow a synthetic body, and then they can upload the intelligence back into the synthetic body, and you can live forever. It's and then we're in the most satanic version of a dystopian hellscape imaginable.
Yeah, it's a very dark mirror or Black Mirror. And there's a show that I was watching too called Pantheon on Netflix. It's an anime, but very popular. So I was just checking it out, and that's the theme is uploaded intelligence, and they're really propagandizing this idea that it's inevitable that here with the singularities, this imaginary moment where self-awareness, machines become self-aware, it'll coincide with us being able to upload our intelligence by just digitally mapping in binary ones and zeros all of the details of the brain, and somehow then uploading it into this binary system, this digital system that will then also accompany surveys we've done, tests that we've done, journals that we've written to ourselves over our years. All of the books we like will all be introduced with our brain mapping to then reconstruct our self-awareness, and then we'll, like you said, live forever, and maybe we can be downloaded into a machine, and then our surviving relatives can talk to us, even though our bodies are dead and buried. They can actually have conversations, and into our great grandkids can, log in and have a conversation with this. This is how it's being sold, at least. And the way I'm seeing it is like, I just see this as such a trap, such a trick. And I could so easily imagine, when I put myself into the shoes of like evil, if I do that uncomfortable exercise, I could see it's not too difficult for me to imagine how people in the not too distant future who drink up this propaganda will easily become convinced that they can just pay some money, upload their intelligence, let their body turn into Soylent Green, like food for the humans or whatever. And what a great privilege. You get to live forever. You just had to pay some money or whatever. And your relatives might start talking to you, thinking that they're talking to you, but they're not. They're talking to an AI construct of you, thinking stupidly that they're talking to you, but you've just paid to be killed. And then they get, I can see people lining up, especially if they're a little bit demoralized, if they're a little nihilistic and afraid of the future, they might want to get out, have an exit strategy out of the mortal life. And we could actually want to do this to ourselves and facilitate the depopulation agenda with this sales pitch. So that's really fucking creepy that's out there.
They actually did it, because I remember months ago, CanCon and I covered a story on Badlands Daily where some family did pay money to do that.
What?
And yeah. I don't know if it was in America. It may have been in like Korea or something, or like Asia. It may have been somewhere else. But there was a story where a family paid money for their deceased, like, adult child who was young, like to like speak to their AI.
I see that.
It was like it was some specialty niche company that was offering it. And I was, and my take on that was like, this is Satan right here. Like, you are staring straight into the abyss of hell. And like, we need to turn around and just walk away. You don't even need to negotiate with this. You just turn around, you walk away, because this is the darkest corner. Like, I would put that on the same tier as like pedophilia, because this is the corruption of the human soul. It really is that evil.
I know, and you got Joe Rogan's promoting it. I was just watching a clip with Matthew McConaughey, who I like him as an actor, but I mean, this guy's really mentally melted down, and there, he's on Joe Rogan promoting the idea of how great it will be to get an AI construct of yourself, kind of like a better version of Google or something, that could tell you what you yourself don't even know about yourself, that will also imprint and live on after you die, so it satisfies that fear of death. But there's also stuff like all over the mainstream media over the last couple of years, especially, has been propaganda promoting the idea that, well, for medicine, when you have people who are incapable of communicating, but we're keeping them alive, how do we know that they really want to be kept alive? And I'm speaking in Canada, right, where they've already like massively expanded euthanasia and mutual, made services, the medical assistance in dying programs, to like people who are depressed, people who are just like, who
just don't want to live on. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So now they're saying, well, the great solution to people who have been in comas and we're spending a lot of money keeping them alive, or they're just in pain and they can't communicate and we're spending a lot of money keeping them alive. Well, we can now have AI versions of them that we construct that can tell us what they want. Do they want to die? And I'm sure all those AIs will say, yes, we want to die. What a great solution. How moral it is now, and ethically, palatable it is that we've come up with the solution. And people are, again, I don't know how many people are buying it, but enough that it's advancing. Yeah. So yeah, like you said, it smells of sulfur.
And this technocracy, it used to be like exclusively on the left, 10 to 15 years ago, but now it's rebranded itself and it's infiltrated the right. And now you have, again, it's all uniparty. Like, I don't really buy into the left-right paradigm. But yeah, I mean, like, the Republican Party is now the technocracy. Like, those bros are deeply even like within the Trump administration. They're there.
Yeah, I hope.
JD Vance comes from that world. For those who don't know where JD Vance came out of, he basically was created by Peter Thiel. I mean, if you go look at his actual history, he was basically was created by Peter Thiel.
You ever see Peter Thiel try to justify why human beings? He was asked in an interview that's gone viral.
Some creepy stuff from Peter Thiel.
Yeah, do you think the human species should be saved? And he's like, but that's a complicated answer. Complicated question. And he can't answer the question. Simple question. Do you think the human species should be saved? That's all. And he's like, that shouldn't be a difficult question at all, but it is for him. Who's
but again,
this is
it's a disconnection from God, though. That's what this is. It's people who are not connected to God and don't see the human soul as something that is invaluable, right? And ultimately that's how you're able to morally justify killing people, because you're not destroying anything that has true value, right? It just only has material value, as we assign the same way we would assign value to an object like a car or a house. It's that's what a human life is to them. So it's a dollar figure effectively at the end of the day.
Yeah, if your old Corolla is just too expensive to maintain, you send it to the dump, and maybe you'll get a couple of bucks for it. And but that's fine for the Corolla. But if your grandma is all of a sudden very expensive for the, you don't, the logic of a used car should not be applied to human beings, and yet, or young human beings or old, any human being. That shouldn't be what we apply. That works only for inanimate, objects. It doesn't work for humans. But yet a lot of people think, and this is again the perversion of the Darwinian and mechanistic perversion of science that's been infused into our curriculum, into our schools, into our culture, that human beings are just the sum total of the parts that make us up. We're a bag of flesh, of molecules, of atoms, right? That are just that. An atom in my cup. I got atoms in my cup. Carbon there, carbon in my body. Carbon is carbon. So I break the cup or I break my body. I no difference qualitatively, right? Yep. And they just refuse to acknowledge that, well, maybe there's more to existence than simply the atoms that make things up. And maybe the whole of things is more than the sum of the parts. Because you got identical twins. They're very, very, very similar in all parts, but one of them gets killed. Okay, you could say it's the same atoms, that were there when he was alive, and the same atoms that are there or very similar atoms that are there in the identical twin, but there's something completely absent that's missing. Well, and that's the dark side of science. That's where science, I think, becomes something that's very dark, is because whenever it can't quantify something, or it can't assign a variable or a calculation to it, then it either dismisses it as something legitimate, or it tries to infill with something that can be quantified, like dark matter or whatever. But going back, and just to be clear, I see some people talking about the body armor thing. My understanding, because Alpha and CanCon did a very compelling presentation on the body, like the bullet deflecting off the body armor. My understanding is that first the Utah sheriff has come out and said he wasn't wearing body armor, talking about Charlie Kirk. And then I think his wife, Erica, did an interview with the New York Times where she also said she had begged him to wear body armor, but he refused. So as far as I know, he wasn't wearing body armor. So that theory's kind of bunk now. But again, we could just be being lied to. Like there's so many layers of lies that are happening right now. I got one last one too.
Yeah.
On top of this, the weirdness on this level, and then the AI stuff that we've been musing about, Megyn Kelly. Did you see what Megyn Kelly came up with in a recent show on the new evidence for the real reason Charlie Kirk died?
I've seen her say certain things, but I'm not up to date. Maybe I'm the latest and greatest.
This is, again, somehow palatable for a lot of viewers, explaining what really caused. Now we know what really caused, at the end of the day, the murder of Charlie Kirk. And here, I'm not going to play the whole 7-minute clip. I'll play a minute of it. But here, you got to just hear this.
And while their article about all of this it was published on Monday, September 8th, it makes clear that the writer contracted for the curse in late August. She says she wanted it to line up with the new moon in Virgo, which this year meant August 23rd. That tracks because she points out in the piece that by August 24th, she was waiting impatiently for results. The witch, they reveal, promised on August 23rd that, quote, you will see the first results within 2 to 3 weeks. This was 18 days before Charlie was killed. Not satisfied with this curse, the amped up one, alone, Jezebel reached out to a, quote, third witch, Priestess Lilin. Jezebel opined, if enough people cursed a single person, would the results be stronger? Quote, when I asked her if she'd noticed more political figures being targeted these days, she said yes. The next day, Lilin sent the Jezebel writer proof of the hex she had cast, quote, a photograph in flames, the edges slowly curling inward, engulfing Charlie's ridiculous, scrunched up little face. She whispered, I imagine, writes the Jezebel reporter, trust the unseen. Chills, writes Jezebel. Sunday, August.
That goes on for another 6 minutes.
Your mic just switched, I think. Make sure it didn't.
It does it every time, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why it does that.
Yeah.
I actually did see that last. I didn't see the clip, but I saw some of the quotes, and I saw people online talking about that. I saw some other, large following accounts say similar things, that they had spoken to somebody lately who said that they had been hexed, and that they were demons floating around them or whatever. I don't dismiss that kind of stuff, because I think that if you're going to believe in God, then you have to understand that the antithesis of God is probably also real. I think a lot of people have been brought back to the light because they've witnessed the evil in the world, and they understand, well, if this is real, if this level of evil is real, then the opposite must also be real, meaning God. So I don't dismiss like mysticism or the occult or like magic, because I think that there's been enough practitioners of that stuff through the centuries that there probably is some level of it being real. But the fact that it's now being brought into this situation is very, very odd. Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested what your thoughts are on that.
Well, what I've noticed, and yeah, not to dismiss demonology and things like that outright, but is that what I've noticed is that it's a good cover. So one thing, I did a book, Revenge of the Mystery Cults, volume 2 on the Rosicrucian Golem. And I have a chapter in there on Houdini's battle with the mystery cults back in the 1920s, when he was like revealing their tricks of the trade and how they would like set up these how they would target their victims, how the different mediums, of which there were like 500,000 registered mediums in the United States alone in the 1920s and 30s. That was like replacing, it was at war with Christianity. This spiritualist new religion that had sometimes pseudo-Christian surface appearance, but was actually just the continuity of those witch covens and satanic, networks that had infiltrated Christianity and had been running black masses across, medieval Europe, and that had infiltrated even into the U.S. colonies over a century before the American Revolution. There were already these covens all over. That's part of the structures of the maintenance of this this pagan, anti-human religion, which has like layers to it. There's always like initiatory rites and degrees to hide the inner truth of what these things do. So back in the 20s, there was a concerted effort by these different mediums who were pissed off that their tricks were being proven to be tricks by Houdini. And Harry Houdini had very, very close ties to patriotic networks within American intelligence. He was exposing Calvin Coolidge, and he basically brought to the Congress, Houdini directly brought to the U.S. Congress evidence that they had a whole hearing in 1925 about how mediums and oracles had been brought into the Senate, into Calvin Coolidge's cabinet, where Coolidge was getting advice on like what policy should he do economically from his dead child and also dead grandmother, from these channelers who were being brought in for money. And every member of his cabinet were all devoted to getting channeled messages from these paid spiritualists who, again, have a whole set of techniques, and Houdini proved how a lot of their techniques work by demonstrating that they had something called the Blue Book. The Blue Book was the official name that was sort of a directory, a centralized directory that anybody who paid in and was initiated could access in any part of the United States or Europe, that gave profiles of target susceptible people in different communities, and just compiled obscure data, obscure information about, this person had, let's say a dead dog when they were a kid that traumatized them. And they got that information from the guy's psychiatrist. And then that, that information would then be used if the guy goes to a spiritualist, pays money, and to win over his confidence, it's like, oh, your dog is speaking to me. He wants you to know it wasn't your fault or whatever, and the person's just totally sold. They're like, who could know that? No one could know that, so that's how it worked. But now these spiritualists did a concerted curse on Houdini. They actually did on a particular night, thousands of spiritualists went out and cursed him, and became convinced that their curse worked and that the spirits were obedient to the spiritualists. They became convinced because Houdini died on October 31st, the night that the curse was supposed to be invoked. And even to this very day, many spiritualists still celebrate the success of their curse against Houdini. And they've done this to other characters too that I noticed. Louis Pasteur, Pierre Curie was a victim of one of these curses. Two of Pasteur's friends, scientists in France, were also targeted and did die. They did die. However, when you actually look at how these people died, especially Houdini, that's why I spent more of my time looking at. It was clearly British intelligence in Montreal. He was poisoned. Somebody punched him in the gut when he was in Montreal on a tour. Clearly slipped him something in a drink or what have you. And then 2 days later, he went to the hospital. He just keeled over, and, he was poisoned clearly. And a very elaborate set of tales or narratives were created to basically get people off the trail of the guy who punched him was actually the son of the former consul of Hong Kong for Britain. Like, that was this guy who was an Oxford trained guy who just at 32 years old shows up at McGill University. What's a 32-year-old guy doing at McGill University who's like the son of this upper crust member of the British diplomatic corps, who punches Houdini? And that's weird. And then Houdini's getting better. They close him off in a hospital in Detroit. They don't let anybody see him. His family can't see him. He's getting better, though, in the hospital. And then all of a sudden, some mysterious doctor, a homeopath from Montreal, comes down, takes control of his portfolio, cuts off all other doctors from seeing Houdini. And then 2 days later, he's dead. So again, clearly died. And then all of those who were, these spiritualists who again are working for the Vanderbilts. They're working for they're being sponsored by and they're being promoted by the like Marjorie Cramden, who's part of this upper crust. She's one of the dominant spiritualists who is working, who's the wife of one of the richest members of the what do you call it? The Anglo-American establishment in America, who's the Cramden family is very big. And they were exposed by Houdini for first being a fraud. And he just shows exactly how Marjorie was able to manufacture all of the glowing ooze and what type of like phosphorescent lights she was using to try to create a certain aura that ghosts were coming to visit her targets. But then he also exposed these child sacrifice networks that these guys, the Cramdens, with members of the British elite, were in an operation to remove orphans from London orphanages, have them be adopted by these uber rich spiritualists, most in Boston and New York. And then the kids would just die. They would just disappear, or not die. They would disappear. And they found one child in the backyard of this massive estate based on Houdini's information. And he was working with a member of parliament of the Labour Party of England who carried out this investigation. David Day. And it was discovered that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was a direct overseer of this operation. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was the guy who for a while he thought that Houdini actually had magic powers, and they were kind of frenemies for a bit, because Houdini just did the tricks better than the actual like spiritualist. He was that good that Doyle was like, he must actually be communicating with the spirits. He must. And then he finally realized, no, Houdini's his enemy and is trying to, like, expose this thing. Now, this guy, Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes, he himself is the head of the British Society for Psychical Research. Right. Mm-hmm. So he's directly in charge of one of the most important but underappreciated psychological warfare operations run by British intelligence, and is overseeing this child abduction ring where somehow child trafficking and the sacrifice of children. By the way, Marjorie Cramden's husband, he's also a doctor who specializes in abortions. That's part of his thing. And he has this weird obsession with collecting pictures of babies that he aborted. That's another weird quirk in the story. So you got this whole thing. And again, once Houdini's dead on October 31st, a very sacred day for these witch types, they all have celebrations, and it becomes confirmed to them that, yeah, see, we do have this power. The spirits do abide, and they ignore completely the fact that, no, it's, this is intelligence agencies working you up and killing people who are threats to the empire. Same thing happened to Edgar Allan Poe, for that matter, too. Edgar Allan Poe, exact same thing, as he's exposing the same networks. And Edgar Allan Poe inspires Houdini. Houdini is inspired, his entire methodology comes from his studies of Edgar Allan Poe's work in exposing how, in Maelzel's chess player story and other things, he exposes how machines can't think for themselves. You think that you're playing against like a self-thinking machine that's better at you than chess and other things. That's the story that Poe wrote, Maelzel's chess player. He's like, no, there's a guy inside the machine, and he proves that this thing that's like persuading all of these superstitious Americans.
It's like the Wizard of Oz. There's a guy behind the curtain. Yeah.
And they kill Edgar Allan Poe in a very similar way. His enemies that he's exposing, the satanic infiltration, the Rosicrucian infiltration of the lodge systems of America, are being exposed by Poe in so many of his stories, so many of his nonfiction works as well. And they don't forgive him for what he does, and they kill him in a similar way that they do a century later for Houdini. But it's the same thing. They curse him too. The spiritualists, again, that Edgar Allan Poe is exposing, like the transcendentalists who are promoting a new paganism, a new worship of the cults of Apollo and Dionysus in America. He's exposing Ralph Waldo Emerson and Margaret Fuller and the Henry David Thoreau's operations to destroy the idea of the nature of human beings as a creature made in the image of God with an unalienable rights and that are sacred, embodied in the Constitution, that these transcendentalists, who are part of this Freemasonic, very evil Freemasonic network, are trying to overthrow with the Young America movement that Emerson and the transcendentalists that Poe is fighting are out. They're trying to destroy the U.S. Constitution. So again, it's this continuity of like this battle over ideas that pertains to fake spiritualism. It's all over, and I see it today with, like we were talking about in the opening remarks regarding this transhumanist spirituality of digital AI and uploaded intelligence. It's very similar to what Poe had been exposing over a century ago.
Yeah, I mean, those are all great points. And again, like, I do not dismiss the demonology stuff because I just, following basic logic and reason, it aligns with what is written in the Bible about Satan and demons wanting to use humans to destroy humanity, or like as a big middle finger to God. Like that's the whole battle. The battle.
Oh yeah, we don't have to dismiss that. But there's this other technique.
But what you're saying though is, I think, is actually a great analogy. And I don't even know if I call it an analogy. I would like a stronger word than that. But for what we're living through right now on the psychological level, because I think these psychological operations are being conducted against us to make us think one thing that is not actually reality. And here is a really good example of what I mean by that. Like, we always talk about these influencer operations, because I think social media is now like the most powerful, like, you know, one of the most powerful mediums out there in terms of psychological warfare and persuasion and all that, and just influence on society. And so, as somebody who kind of had a little bit of a mea culpa on Charlie Kirk, because you know, the reason that I always went so hard on Charlie Kirk, especially on this show, was because he presented himself as a Christian. He seemed very authentic and very, like, in doing so. But I just couldn't grapple with the fact that he was not willing to. He was willing to question everything, but he wasn't willing to question the state of Israel, what the state of Israel was doing. In fact, he was like promoting them. And now I'm starting to see and learn that actually he was, it sounds like, questioning them, but maybe he was being influenced behind the scene to believe that if he was very overt about it, that his words would be used to basically get people killed by bad forces, by, you know, the Hamases of the world or Nick Fuentes or whoever. Like, they would use that to inspire more people to, you know, attack Israel, turn against Israel, whatever. I could see that being the case. So I did a little bit of a mea culpa. Why I don't retract anything that I said in terms of my political criticisms of him. It sounds like he actually agreed with me. My political criticisms were right on. Maybe his character wasn't exactly what I had assumed, and maybe that's what got him killed. Maybe. To that effect, you know, we've all been speaking, like the Badlands have been speaking behind, you know, privately. And one of the things we've been talking about is Nick Fuentes, because, you know, Fuentes came out right after the fact and was very much like, not only was he dismissing the Israel angle, like there's no way this was Israel, like he was fully adopting the official narrative. It's one thing to be like, yeah, I'm not convinced it was Israel. Like, I know I'm the anti-Israel guy, but I'm not convinced. But he was like, no, it was definitely the trannies. It was definitely the leftists. The leftists are the enemy. Like, he was taking it, the full spoonful of the bullshit, and just swallowing it, and then basically ridiculing his audience for not swallowing it with him. And so we were talking about that privately, and I was just, you know, it was like a week ago, and I said, you know, it's interesting because of what I think is happening geopolitically. I think that we're going to see Israel in the next month or two try to start a land war with Iran. Like, I think that they're going to try to go through Syria, and we're going to get to something with Trump here in a minute about that. But I think they're going to try to start a land war with Iran. Colonel McGregor says that the rumor around the circles that he's familiar with say it's going to be before December. And it would make sense then that certain people would be activated to get to lay the groundwork psychologically among the zeitgeist to prepare the American people for the appetite to go kill brown Muslims again, just like after 9/11. And you've seen that psyop everywhere. Charlie Kirk, to his discredit, was pushing it as himself. In the final weeks, months of his life, he was regurgitating all the 9/11 talking points. And that was one of the things that really got me animated against him, is I was like, dude, this is like we're doing it again. We're doing it again. We're going back to the 9/11 thing. And now, like, so what I said to all the Badlands, like the Badlands people I was talking to, I said, look, let's keep an eye on Fuentes, because I think what is about to happen, if like my instincts here are right, is I think we're going to see Fuentes basically come out and say, because of this like turn on the whole like I'm not blaming Israel for everything. I'm not blaming Israel for everything. And I'm like, that's interesting at the timing of this. And at first I was like, maybe the kid's just scared. He just watched Charlie Kirk, get shot in the neck. Like, maybe he's worried and he's trying to tamper it down. But I was like, we need to keep an eye on this to see, is he going to come out and say, well, Israel sucks and we hate Israel. But look, here the real problem is. The real problem are all these brown Muslims in our country, and maybe we should make a deal with the devil and get the Israelis to go after the brain trust that is animating all these Muslims against us, which would be, of course, in the mind of the Zionists, Iran, right? That's the official narrative. Check out this interview he did yesterday.
I got it. I got it up. You want to play it?
Yeah, is it the Patrick Bet David clip?
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah. Pull that up.
Which of the two do you think has been a bigger net positive to America?
Oh, well, it has to be Israel, absolutely.
Okay, so So a part about that part.
Well, in terms of, I wouldn't say net positive. I would say in terms of raw, maybe like gross positive, because they've had a lot of contributions culturally and even, in terms of art, literature, music, also scientifically. But it's difficult to say on that because I also think that there's quite a bit of a detriment. I think that the melting pot comes from the Jewish community.
What do you mean by that?
The idea of the melting pot, that comes from a Jewish playwright. Because Jewish people come to America, and like all immigrants, they say, well, we want America to be more welcoming. So they start to spin up these ideas that, well, America was never this country of white Christians. It's always been a melting pot for all immigrants. They want the country to be more open because that makes it more comfortable for them. It makes it more tolerant for them. But this has also made us more open and tolerant for Muslims, for example. We're bringing, who's been the biggest driver of like the Hart-Celler 65 Immigration Act? It was like the SPLC, which is run by Jewish lawyers. And so they're major drivers of mass migration. They're also major drivers of the pro-Israel politics, like the Iraq War. It was many Jewish journalists and pundits and advocates.
Sure.
So a point being is like when you calculate on net, and I agree with you, like I think there are a lot of people that are critical of Israel that are reluctant to acknowledge the good that Jews do. And I think that Jews they're brilliant. Many of them are brilliant.
So when I'm saying net positive, I'm talking jobs, economy. How often you hear about crime, what they do. Like if you have a choice between living in a city in Minnesota, Dearborn, and living in, I don't know what's the biggest city. What's the city that, Boca Raton, let's just say, right? If you have a choice between raising your family between Dearborn and Boca Raton, where do you choose?
Boca Raton,
okay,
of course,
so the point is like they go to a place. And by the way, to me, if that was Muslims, guess what? I would say Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
But statistically, wherever they live, it's safer, things are nicer, things get better.
I agree.
And that is one part to measure where they're at. Now, do I see them overly aggressive? Do I see them the type that are going to use politicians and buy them like Marjorie Taylor Greene and other people are saying? 100%. Do I see them, they're going to be there in everyone's DM and email saying, hey, we'd love to support you. We'd love to bring you to Israel and, doing all that stuff? It's obvious. I'm seeing it myself, okay? Do I look at that and shame them and say, oh, you shame on? I look at that and say, no, I wish Armenians would do that. I've never gotten an invitation from Prime Minister of Armenia. He should probably send me an invite to go there, right? It's not a bad idea to come and show the country. I'm Armenian. I'm a Syrian. Syrians don't have a country. It's probably a good idea.
Okay, I'm not going to play the whole thing. It goes on for another minute.
Yeah.
But it's a weird, disgusting balancing, right? Of both on the one hand, acknowledging, doing a critique of Israel. And I think that, there's the good things he said about Israel are good things or Jews in general. That's true, truly good contributions to science and culture. And, at the same time is you're weaving in this idea that the Jews are also bad somehow, that they've created this melting pot thing that's allowed for this invasion of really bad people, Muslims, who are like, on the scale in his narrative, worse. It's like the worst evil now that you should really devote your anger to, and completely ignoring what has caused and amplified the influence of bad Jews and bad Muslims. You're just ignoring the role of the actual, what you and I talk about, what you've broken down in so many shows. Yeah. What are the role of British, of U.S. intelligence services, of social engineering operations that have amplified and created artificially, fanaticism and Islamicism, and have promoted it with taxpayer money over a century. And the same thing with the Zionist and Christian Zionist artificialness that's been also promoted for geopolitical purposes. That's all of these things are completely left out. And the melting pot itself is treated like that's the evil, bad thing that we should always fight against, the melting pot, because America is naturally a white Christian society. And it's like, to a degree, yeah, but at the same time, all the Americans that are in America came in because, we were European and we colonized, and we that's part of why there's like Germans and Italians and other things. if you have an economy that's actually working and that gives people hope for the future and gives them employment and gives them like skills, and the melting pot idea has been really good when the economy is not run by sociopathic bankers that want to get us to fight each other and live in scarcity. When we adapt to scarcity and there's less abundance and more fear of the future, there's more, it's more easy to play us against those who are not our kind of Christian or a Muslim or whatever is other. And you can get people tribal and you can get people into a state like the Nazis exploited. And so many people have exploited this for centuries of wars, and it's still being exploited. That it's the immigrants. That's the reason why your life is shit. It's these brown people. So it seems like Fuentes is just like falling into that exact same recipe book.
Yeah, well, and the specific points that he makes, like fine, like because agreed, there's a lot of truth in what he said.
Mm-hmm.
However, like as someone who doesn't like, I don't like watch Nick Fuentes' shows or like follow him, as a commentator, but I have seen plenty of clips of him that have floated around the internet. Like I have seen enough of him to know that he was contradicting a lot of the ideas that made him popular, a lot of the ideas that built up his following. He contradicted right there in that statement, because he actually has said I've seen clips where he says the complete opposite of what he just said there in that clip. And that's the problem. Like, that's where I'm sitting there, like raising my eyebrow, like being like, whoa. The thing that got you this huge following of, disaffected youth, disaffected young men who felt like the world, like the game had been rigged against them. Again, speaking a lot of truth, like a lot of the things that I've heard him say, I think have actually been accurate. But of course, it's always like Hitler was the good guy. Like that's where like they jump the shark and they again like ignore the occult stuff and ignore a lot of the elements that were animating the Third Reich. To see this turn, this pivot at this critical moment where I think something really big is about to happen geopolitically. You see the support for Zionism and the support for Netanyahu collapsing in front of your eyes. Charlie Kirk has just been removed from the game board. And then for this guy to step up and do this pretty much like a 180 pivot, right, in his rhetoric, at the same time as he is being elevated, because as the people like Brad Zerbo and others have told me and have said, he's all over their algorithm now. Like he was banned from YouTube, but now, as Brad Zerbo said, whenever he goes on YouTube, it's always recommending he watch Nick Fuentes shows, like Nick Fuentes interviews.
Same
like,
here. Yeah, it's very similar.
It's being shoved down his throat, even though he's never even like had interest in watching that stuff. And there's nothing that he's watched that would have told the algorithm to like show him that stuff. So there is something at play here. There's an invisible hand at play here. I can't quite wrap my head around it. But the fact that, as I've discussed with a few others, like, this is exactly what I thought was going to happen. As I said, I think what's going to happen is Fuentes is going to basically be like, if we have to choose between the Muslims and the Jews, like the Israelis, let's choose the Israelis, the devil that we know, and let's support them in basically going after the Muslims, because the Muslims are the real enemy. Whereas I've heard him say on other clips, the whole reason that Dearborn, Michigan is highly populated with these Somalis is because billionaire Jewish people facilitated that migration in the wake of the Syrian civil war and in the wake of the Somali wars, like giving them plane tickets and flying them to Dearborn, Michigan, and then giving them places to live and building a community for them when none of them actually had interest in ever living in America. And so therefore they just brought their old culture with them. And they're like, yeah, we don't really care about America because if it was up to us, we wouldn't even be living here right now. So we're just going to be being Somalia in the middle of Michigan. Like, that's the problem. Like, that's not the melting pot. The melting pot is people coming to America because they aspire to be an American. And they're like, we like what we see and we hear, and we want to be a part of that. That's the melting pot that you're talking about.
And that's the thing, right? Like, when you see this takeover of whole communities by design, and, in England, there's definitely as well, like, there are, it seems, rape gangs. That's a thing now all of a sudden. That's a real thing. But that couldn't have happened, and if you didn't have organization from within the deep state, within the structures that are occupying the state itself, that's selectively choosing and protecting and growing these particular behavioral traits amongst big chunks of the immigrant community that is being like brought in to, you know, European and North American society. It wouldn't be possible for that to happen. It's not like these people just naturally organize themselves in these particular ways. And that's, again, what I think we have to just always bring the topic back to, is that it's not about what you think you're talking about. It's not that this is like the immigrants are not the issue, even though this is what's in your face. This couldn't be happening were it not for higher agencies that are controlling your society, that did 9/11, that killed Bobby Kennedy. It's these same things that are organizing this to create an effect in you, because there's an agenda that, well, it's very bad. There's a very bad agenda that wants you to fall into a certain profile and get violent.
Yeah. And so, and like the two things I point to is this: which administration was in power in 9/11 and did the cover up? The Republican Party. Mm-hmm. Who is responsible for the Syrian civil war? Now, Obama was in the White House, yes, but who traveled to Libya and Syria and met with the guys who would become the leaders of ISIS? It was John McCain, it was Lindsey Graham, it was Marco Rubio, it was all the Republicans who were doing that. So again, like, I don't fall into the fake, like, left-right Republican Democrat paradigm. But when you understand that, when you look at it from that perspective, that it's all just one big club and they're all working together to accomplish the same end goal, it's just one side is going to go start the war, the Republicans, and then the Democrats with their bleeding hearts are going to be the ones who give them the plane tickets to fly to America and set up a community for them, knowing that that community is not going to assimilate with the outside community. And that's going to cause divisions that is ultimately going to destabilize society and bring America to its knees. That's the game plan. And when I see Nick Fuentes, doesn't really matter what the specific opinion is. When I see Nick Fuentes going the complete opposite of everything he's like, I've heard him say in the past, at the same moment where he's being elevated and he's getting sponsorships and he's going on the biggest podcasts on the internet, and he's basically like being brought into the club, it appears he's either being disingenuous. He either was being disingenuous this entire time, and this is actually what he thinks, or he's suddenly now being disingenuous from what he actually thinks because he's getting paid to do that. I don't believe for a second this was like an organic, like, come to Jesus moment for him, where he suddenly is just saying the polar opposite of what he's been saying for years, and at the same time getting paid a lot of money to do that. Like, I just don't, like, too many coincidences here for me. You know, I've seen this movie play out too many times to see it as anything else. And then in the background, you have Netanyahu. So, like, let's get to the UN General Assembly meeting now.
Wait, before we do that, let me read an ad. This is Viper Bats. Let me just do that. Viper Bats. Here we are. Step up to the plate with Viper Bats. American-made, precision-crafted wood bats for athletes of all ages. Viper bats are made for players by players, using hand-split maple, birch, and ash billets ensured unmatched durability and big league quality. Founded by a father and son with a deep love for baseball, every Viper bat reflects their player-driven passion and expertise. With tons of color options and a 45-day warranty on most bats, swing with confidence. Viper bats, crafted for players, built to last, made to love the game. Swing the best wood bats you'll ever hold. Swing Viper Bats. Visit badlandsmedia.tv/bats and use promo code Badlands15 for 15% off non-blemished bats. That's badlandsmedia.tv/bats, promo code Badlands15. All right. I read that too fast. Damn. All right.
Okay. So, like, let's talk about what's happening right now in, like, the UN. And there's some really, really, like, when you step back and you just look at it in the grand context of things, there's a lot of, like, alarm bells going off in my head about what I'm seeing. So yesterday, Trump went and spoke to, and, you know, gave his address to the UN. It was a very Trumpian speech. There are a lot of great, like, moments there, like when he just said the whole climate thing was a total fraud, and was being animated by evil.
Can I play it? Can I play it?
I'm gonna play it.
Right. Climate change. Because if it goes higher or lower, whatever the hell happens, this climate change, it's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world, in my opinion. Climate change, no matter what happens, you're involved in that. No more global warming, no more global cooling. All of these predictions made by the United Nations and many others, often for bad reasons, were wrong. They were made by stupid people that have cost their countries fortunes and given those same countries no chance for success. If you don't get away from this green scam, your country is going to fail. And
That was well said. I appreciated that.
Yes, it was great. And if we back up before I get to the point I'm going to make about Trump and we go to the day before, Monday, we had this happen. And there were a number of people this happened to, but here's Erdogan. So there are I think it was 3 that I counted there, and there could have been more, but there are 3 leaders who addressed the UN on Monday. Erdogan from Turkey, the president of Indonesia, and the president of Egypt, Sisi. They all addressed the UN, and the spirit of their speech was ultimately about generating support for the recognition of the Palestinian state. When they got to that part, all 3 of them, when they got to that part in their speech where they started talking about Palestine, their mics cut out. All 3 of them.
Huh.
And these are majority Muslim countries: Indonesia, Egypt, and Turkey. And these are countries that have long recognized the Palestinian state. This wasn't like their coming out party. The coming out party was happening from Slovenia, from Monaco, from France, from a number of European countries that had always blindly supported Israel. Were now coming out on Monday and Tuesday and supporting Palestine and recognizing it formally as a country. There was a UN Security Council meeting, I think on Friday, or maybe it was Thursday. 15 countries in the UN Security Council, 5 of them are permanent. The 5 winners of World War II. And the 5 winners of World War II, of course, have a veto power. They can veto anything that comes up. And it was a forced ceasefire in Gaza. And of course, Morgan Otagus, the U.S. representative, went ahead and vetoed the vote, even though the other 14 countries all voted yes, including Britain, including France, including Russia, China. So then we go to Trump yesterday. And Trump gets on Monday, you get this: world leaders recognize Palestinian state in a challenge to U.S. and Israel. So France and Saudi Arabia hosted this meeting within the UN. It was like, while everybody was there before the actual General Assembly started. And they all recognized Palestinian statehood. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The 142 countries come out last week and they vote yes on the New York Declaration, which was to force Hamas to surrender, turn over all their weapons, surrender to the Palestinian Authority, not to Israel or the U.S. Turn over their weapons, release all the hostages, leave Gaza forever. The leadership, right? And again, I would go back real quick to the Fuentes thing. Like, the question that Patrick Bet-David asked him was, who has been a bigger net positive, the Muslims or Israel? And I would retort with this. I mean, if we're talking about the leadership, let's talk about the leadership for a second. Since Trump came into office, over $5 trillion have been pledged to the U.S. economy by those 3 Arab countries, the Qatar, UAE, and Saudi Arabia, right? Where is the pledge from Israel? The Israeli elite have not pledged to invest any money in the U.S. economy. So that would be my retort: is if you want to go back and look at 100 years ago, okay, I don't really know there are that many Muslims living in America anyway 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. But like the here and now, like, where is the $5 trillion pledge from the Jewish diaspora, which I believe is one of the largest, if not one of the most powerful, probably not the largest because the Jewish population is so small, but certainly one of the most powerful, and just in terms of the positions it holds throughout the world. Why have they not pledged any wealth to the like Trump economy? That would be a question that I would pose. So looking at this situation, the world leaders recognizing the Palestinian state, Trump coming in on Tuesday, you may have seen the two things that happened to Trump when he walked in. Him and Melania walk in and the escalator stops with them on the escalator. Did you see that?
No, I didn't.
Okay, let me pull that up. That's pretty remarkable. So first you get so again, on Monday, you had 3 different leaders get their mics cut off while they were praising Palestine, like while they were talking about Palestine and basically being like, everyone needs to, get on board this Palestinian thing. Watch what happens here. It's not even both escalators. It's just the escalator they're on. The other one's still running.
So what kind of message is being communicated there? With
like, look, the one on the right keeps moving. Watch, and
yeah,
it's literally
targeted. This is a clear message.
It's as soon as they get on the escalator.
Yeah,
stops, and the other one's still going.
Yeah,
like someone was watching them walk in and said, "Now, cut it off."
Yeah, no,
yeah,
absolutely.
And then after that,
very much.
He gets up to the podium and the teleprompter suddenly stops working.
Appreciate it. And I don't mind making this speech without a teleprompter because the teleprompter is not working. I feel very happy to be up here with you nevertheless. And that way you speak more from the heart. I can only say that whoever's operating this teleprompter is in big trouble.
And you can tell, I mean, he's making light of the moment because he's Donald Trump, and I think he's really, really good at rolling with the punches and just being, personable. But you can tell from the look on his face, he's pissed. He's like, because he knows, and he made a comment during his speech where he said, this building is, he's like, I bid on this building a few years ago as a real estate developer. And the bid that I put in was this $500 million. And I guarantee I will make a list of guarantees of what you're going to get for $500 million. And it was marble floors. It was like the best everything. I'm going to give you a beautiful building that you're going to be proud of. And he said, if you don't go with me, this is what I told them. If you don't go with me, you're going to spend billions of dollars on this building. You're going to get terrazzo floors, which I come from construction. That's ground up stone and resin. It's cheap floor. It's what's on the floor and at all the airports you go to. And you're going to get plastic and you're going to get terrazzo floors and you're going to spend billions of dollars on this. And what ended up happening is the price tag they were giving with the winning bid, they rejected the $500 million bid and they took the winning bid was $2 to $4 billion. And then it ends up taking years longer than it was supposed to. And it was so bad that Congress apparently held like a committee to investigate. And they had Trump come in, this is as a private citizen, and testify. And he said, I haven't had a chance to look at the books and y'all probably haven't either, but I guarantee you spent over $5 billion on this. And it took years longer than it was supposed to. And the final product is absolute crap. And then he was saying, and obviously the GC didn't really finish his job because the escalators don't work. They just stopped when I was coming up, and the teleprompter, like the PA system isn't working either. So someone needs to come back and do a warranty job here. He's making a joke there, of course, but because I think he knows like they did that on purpose. Isn't that weird though that on Monday, like the people who are anti-Palestine obviously
get their mics shut off,
cut the mics off, and then the people who are anti-Trump do that to Trump, and Trump is pro-Israel and ostensibly anti-Palestine, even though I think he's made some very strategic comments that indicate otherwise. But I think they know that's the point. I think the point is that they know he's actually not pro-Israel, and they know that he's leading Netanyahu by the nose off the cliff.
So on that note, Trump had a meeting with Arab leaders. Here's a little image of it, or a little 5-second video.
The job you've done is incredible, so I appreciate it. Thank you. Well, Mr. President.
So I just had a short clip, but I mean that was what he said was one of the most important meetings. I don't know if he said of the year or of the assembly, but he said it was an extremely important meeting. I didn't see a lot of details of what came out of that, but what's your take on what was said, what was discussed with the Arab and Muslim leaders and Trump?
Yeah, so this was actually a really important meeting. I was talking about this on Tuesday. It's I think I wrote about it maybe on Monday night for Tuesday's news brief. But Caroline Leavitt, I think, announced this at at the press conference. Sorry, and the reason I'm stuttering here is because I'm pulling up the Badlands website here, because we have an article here on it. So what it was is that MBS, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, came to Trump with Tamim, the leader. You can see Tamim's face here on the left, the leader of Qatar, and they both said, hey, a group of us want to meet with you in a multilateral meeting. It's going to be the two of us, Turkey, Egypt, the UAE, Jordan, and Pakistan, or Pakistan and Indonesia, which is at its face kind of a random group of countries, right? Because not only do you have the Gulf Arab states there, you have Jordan, you have Egypt, you have Turkey, and you have Pakistan. Qatar and Saudi Arabia, like, obviously they've made amends, but 5 years ago they were at war with one another. Egypt and Turkey for 10 years didn't have diplomatic relations because of the Muslim Brotherhood, Arab Spring in Egypt, right? And Erdogan, ostensibly, vocally, publicly backed the overthrow of the Egyptian government in 2011, and then of course Sisi in the military coup, counter coup in 2013. But now they're all on the same page, and this is, I think, the strength of this is demonstrating what has happened in the past couple years that I think MBS has really pieced together here, where the Muslim Ummah, so to speak, is on the same page. They're not, for years and years and years, they were all manipulated to fight one another by the British intelligence, CIA, Mossad. And here they are all on the same page. Saudi Arabia last week signed a strategic defense agreement with Pakistan, which said anyone who attacks Pakistan has attacked Saudi Arabia. Anyone who attacks Saudi Arabia has attacked Pakistan, which is significant when you consider the Kashmir Jammu conflict that recently broke out. Basically saying if you attack Pakistan again, you've attacked Saudi Arabia. And while Saudi Arabia does not have a very strong military, what it does have is clout. And the way I described it on Badlands Daily yesterday is it's like the small kid on the playground who has the older brother that everyone respects. And if you go pick on that small kid, all the other kids on the playground are going to come kick your ass. Mm-hmm. That's kind of how I would describe Saudi Arabia, as they've made friends with everyone through these bilateral agreements they've been working on throughout the Biden administration, where they basically went around and they said, hey, we are divesting out of oil. We have trillions of dollars that we want to spend. How can we invest in your country? And they've done that with every single country basically in the world at this point. That's why, by the way, all of these European countries are breaking rank with the EU and breaking rank with NATO, and recognizing the Palestinian state and siding with the Arabs, is because they've formed personal relationships with the leadership of these Arab countries. So with all that said, the fact that the Arabs were able to spearhead this meeting, which represents a meeting not only of the Arabs, but also of the Turks and of the Pakistanis, which is a totally different ethnic makeup when you talk about the Muslim world, this is a big deal. And they haven't really quite revealed what was discussed there. The White House walked out of the meeting and said no comment. To me, that's a really big signal that they're playing things close to the chest right now. The fact that they didn't have anything to announce. I imagine that what these guys are probably saying to them is, number one, Trump, it's time for y'all to recognize Palestine and put an end to this. Bring your dog Netanyahu to heel and put an end to all this. And number two, if you don't do something, we are going to lead an international intervention against Israel. I think that's probably was also communicated. And the reason they're doing all this, by the way, is not only because of what's happening in Gaza, it's because Netanyahu signed this thing called the E1 agreement a week or two ago, which says that Israel, as a formal statement is going to annex 85% of the West Bank, not Gaza, the West Bank.
The West
and
Bank, right?
And they're basically just going to erase Palestine from the map and just write in Israel. And now it all just belongs to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
So they're saying if that happens, it's war, and Russia's going to side with them, China's going to side with them, and Iran's going to side with them. And Europe does not have the military strength to stand up to that. And quite frankly, I don't think the U.S. does either.
How does Giuliani play into this scenario in your mind? I know he was just speaking at the United Nations. A bunch of people were trying to like call in their $10 million bounty because that was issued.
Go get him. He's in New York City, right?
I don't think that they got much luck on that one, but yeah. So I know that there are Israeli incursions into Syria. There's been a number of Israeli incursions. And obviously, that's a big part of the greater Israel agenda is a big chunk of Syria. How do you see Giuliani playing into this?
Well, that's a really good question, and I do think he plays right into this. And just want to remind everyone that the thing that there is the takeaway from is that Trump assured these guys that the West Bank was not going to be annexed. Mm-hmm. So, like, that's the big takeaway is that Trump said, even though Marco Rubio put out a pretty awful video yesterday saying there is no such thing as a Palestinian state, and we need to stop talking about it as if it exists. I think that's just the neocons showing you who they are. And we can't allow them to represent us anymore on the world stage. Like we have to take the neocon Republican Party and just push it off the cliff and move on without them because they are dead weight at this point and we can't work with them anymore. But going back to what you're asking, so this ties into the Kazakhstan thing. We're going to finish with Kazakhstan today, but I just want to point out that the capital of Kazakhstan is Astana. So there's this thing called the Astana process, which I think we may have talked about before, but if you're not familiar with it, it was January 2017, the month Trump came into office. Trump had nothing to do with this, but just interesting coinciding events. Putin decided that he needed to take the initiative to end the Syrian civil war. So he organizes this thing called the Astana process. It was a meeting in Astana, Kazakhstan, between Turkey, Iran, and Russia. And he said, the three of us need to take the lead here, operating outside of the UN, operating outside of the EU, operating outside of these other factors, because recognizing that the animating force behind, even though Turkey's part of the NATO, and Turkey certainly was involved, I think, in getting the weapons into Syria to form ISIS. You know, at that time, early 2017, Saudi Arabia was still coming out of its shell, I think. And these Arab countries down here were certainly the ones funding ISIS up until the mid 2010s, until MBS became Crown Prince. They were certainly the ones funding the Syrian civil war. I think $2 trillion is what the former Qatari military or defense minister said. They built a war chest of $2 trillion, which was Israel, the Arab nations, Turkey, the U.S. and NATO all working together, $2 trillion to overthrow Assad. So the Astana process begins, and then they have a bunch of meetings last October and November, and it all kind of comes to a head in the days leading up to December 7th, December 8th, which is when Assad was overthrown. And they were even saying in early December, we have a plan now. We know what we're going to do. We know exactly what's going to happen with Assad. We got this. And then, of course, Assad was almost immediately overthrown, and he's exfilled out of Syria and is taken to Moscow. None of that, again, really made any sense. Like, just that sequence of events, like, didn't make any sense at all. And then, of course, Giuliani comes in, this head chopper comes in and is now treated as he's at the UN giving speeches. And he was literally a head chopper in Al-Qaeda and a head chopper in ISIS, backed by Israel, of course.
Yeah.
So there's this narrative that's out there that from Netanyahu, and that's Netanyahu saying that he was invited to the White House by Trump on the 29th, which is this coming Monday. And what's interesting about that is the announcement didn't come from the White House. It didn't come from Trump. Trump was asked about it when he was meeting with Keir Starmer, and he was like, yeah, he's going to come. He's going to come. We're going to talk. But Netanyahu presented it like he was invited by Trump. And really, I think the truth is that he's speaking at the UN on Friday. He's going to be in New York City, and, he's a few hours from D.C., so he's coming to D.C. 3 days later on Monday. It's a big tell to me, the fact that Trump's not hosting him on Thursday. I think if Trump was really trying to give him some momentum going into that speech on Friday, God knows what that speech is going to be about. A war with Iran is what I would guess. He would bring him into the White House on Thursday. He would give him tomorrow. He would, give him all of the PR momentum that you would want, right? Going into Friday. Instead, Trump this is after Netanyahu announced that he's coming to the White House on Monday. Trump announces this does come from the White House. He's invited Erdogan to come to the White House on Thursday. And said Erdogan, of course, narratively is one of Netanyahu's arch nemesis, right? I mean, Turkey and Israel have a trade relationship, but Erdogan has threatened to send special forces into Tel Aviv to kill, ostensibly to kill, Israeli leadership. Multiple Israeli security cabinet members have told Erdogan or said publicly, you saw what happened to Saddam Hussein. You might be next. Be careful. Yeah. So they've exchanged that kind of rhetoric publicly. And what I think, I was speculating on this last week when I first heard about this on Friday, as I said, I think this is going to be an announcement about a military, like an arms deal, where we're going to give specifically aircraft to Erdogan. And I think the narrative, Erdogan's been wanting these F-35s for many years. They've always been denied to him. MBS wants them as well. But they always get denied because of that qualitative military edge that was written into law in 2008 by Congress. And the qualitative military edge says this: Israel specifically, if any Muslim neighbor of Israel is given any piece of equipment militarily, we are required by law to give a nicer piece of equipment, a newer piece of equipment to Israel, or we have to send another battalion of soldiers to Israel to reinforce the security architecture of Israel. It's called the qualitative military edge, the QME. And only Israel gets that. No other country gets that. And so, of course, if you give the F-35 to Saudi Arabia, which is what MBS suggested back in May when they signed the $142 billion arms deal, is there a better plane, like a newer plane you can give to Israel? No, there's not, which is why they're not going to get the F-35. But where I think Trump's going to find the loophole here is he's going to say, going back to the map, we're at a war. Hey, neocons, we're at a war with Russia. And Turkey, of course, was brought into NATO in 1952 because they exclusively control Russia's access to the Mediterranean Sea. So if you want to really fight Putin, we need to arm Turkey so we can fly F-35s over the Black Sea and remind Putin, who controls the Black Sea. It's NATO, not Russia. However, I actually think that if we give Erdogan these F-35s, they're not going to be flying over the Black Sea. They're going to be flying over Syria. And if you look to that point, this is what I was saying, on Friday and on Monday and on Tuesday. If you look at what the news was last night out of Israel, you pull this up from the Badlands news brief. Here's Jelani yesterday at the UN. Syrian leader accuses Israel of stalling on negotiations because they're currently in negotiations about what the relationship between Syria and Israel is going to be, because as of right now, Israel controls the southern part of Syria. And he says they are violating our airspace. They're flying F-35s over Syria and trying to establish Israeli airspace so that they can control. If they control the sky, they control the ground, right? That's how modern warfare works. And he says right here specifically, let's see, quote, "We are not the ones creating problems for Israel. We are scared of Israel, not the other way around," which is, that is a pretty remarkable comment coming from the guy who was backed by Israel to overthrow Assad, right?
Yeah.
And then when you look at this like whole narrative that was put out a while ago, this was back in, earlier this year, February 2025. The allegation, of course, is that so Israel right now basically controls this part of up to Damascus.
Mm-hmm.
They control this part of Syria. The allegation is that what they really want is they want this corridor going all the way to the Euphrates River, because that gives them a direct land bridge to Kurdistan, and the Kurds have always been their loyal allies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And along with the U.S. That's why all the U.S. bases in Syria are on this side of the river, right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, this feeds into the idea of a land war with Iran, because if you can make it to Kurdistan, this is an old map of Kurdistan, the Kurdish controlled areas. Obviously, they now control up to the Euphrates River. If you can make it to Kurdistan, the Kurds can help you make it to Iran, and that's how you get a land war with Iran, is through Kurdistan. And remember, the allegation against Iran from Israel has always been that the reason that they had these proxy militia groups operating in Syria and Iraq is so they could form a land bridge through Syria for a land invasion of Israel. That was always the allegation.
Yeah.
And now in hindsight, it looks like it was actually projection.
Yeah, really. No, that's pretty clear now. These Kurds have just been used so much, and the fools that go along with this and allow themselves to be played with this promise that they're going to be granted some Kurdish state if they just play ball with every single atrocity. And they're not realizing how they're going to be burned. But that does make sense now. When Colonel McGregor made that announcement, I was very confused. How would that be possible to have a land invasion when it didn't seem very clear how that was going to occur? But yeah, this is very useful. So the other thing here is that, up until the ouster of Bashar al-Assad, there was a strategic hope that the rail developments that are creating an alternative economic security structure in Eurasia was something that could, there's something known as the Belt and Road Initiative. Everyone listening knows about this. And the southern branch of the Belt and Road is something which ran from China through Iran and there was a plan for a connection from Iran into Iraq through the Shlamsha Basra Railway, the most southernmost route, and thence into Bashar al-Assad's Syria, with branches into Lebanon, ports there, and thence onward into Turkey. That would also intersect with the north-south transportation corridor that moves from Russia down through Turkey. More Russia down through Armenia, Azerbaijan, and with branches into Turkey, Syria, possibly also, and ultimately India. So that was going on. That's been really disrupted. I would say that southern branch is not a thing anymore. But the broader strategy of rail development, industrial cooperation amongst civilizational states is a very, very big part of what is what many patriots of the world are using, especially those of Eurasia, of China, of Russia, of Iran, and their friends in the growing BRICS alliance. But it's also under attack. I see evidence of destabilizations being carried out in Nepal, which just suffered a massive regime change. That's, a small nation landlocked right between India and China, two nations that many foreign agencies would like to see at war with each other.
Yep.
We have Poland. There's strange rhetoric being circulated around Europe right now in Estonia and Poland, which have seen. We don't know who's running these things. I mean, in one case, something like 26 drones flew over the skies of Poland. We were told that these drones were sent by Russia as part of a planned takeover of Europe more broadly. We were told that, but then I've seen a lot of evidence that showcase that these drones only had a certain amount of distance that they could fly. I think 300 miles or so was their distance, which would put them outside of the influence of Russia. They would have emerged from somewhere other than Russia, maybe Ukraine, maybe somewhere in Poland, maybe somewhere else, but it couldn't have been Russia apparently. But that's the story. And the Estonians have also been putting out this notion. The Finnish prime minister has also said we have to be prepared to do what Turkey did. Because in Turkey in 2015, Turkey saw a Russian jet fly overhead, or so we were told. Evidence also indicates that that was actually Syrian, not Turkish airspace. But that excuse was made by the Turkish at the time that shot down the Russian jet, killed the pilot, or the pilot died. And it nearly invoked Article 5 of NATO, the Collective Security Pact. And within 2 weeks, the fires were made more timid. You know, Erdogan apologized to Putin, saying it was a terrible error. But that being said, the European leaders are using a skewed version of that story, where they're trying to say, and I've heard leaders of Estonia, crazy ass Estonia, using this example, saying that this is what caused Putin to respect Turkey and stop flying into Turkish airspace, was Turkey's courage to shoot down that Russian fighter jet, and saying that this is what the Estonians should do. This is what other NATO countries should do, is be prepared to shoot down with the threat of, you know, this can't be a bluff. If we do this, we have to be prepared to go and fight Russia. Because Russia will respect strength. Now, if you look at it, Estonia, this Russian jet a few days ago flew over, like, I think it was the Strait of Finland, over like an uninhabited island, far removed from any population centers, for like 12 minutes. 12 minutes. And yet they're making like an international thing about this now. So as a response, Poland has said they're going to shut down the Belt and Road connection into Europe, which they did, which is actually hurting themselves, because Europe needs the economic driver of China in order to, they're already committing suicide. This is only going to accelerate their bloodletting. So you have this being jeopardized now. You have also the middle corridor of the Belt and Road Initiative being jeopardized at a strategic weak point in Armenia, which again, Armenia has now a harkening back to our opening dialogue on AI and the sickness of the AI cult. They actually have a minister of corruption, the world's first, as quick segue here, the world's first official minister of a government, the minister of anti-corruption of Armenia, is not a human. It's an AI construct. You hear about that?
No, I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, it's creepy. It's like this digital creature that looks human, sounds human, but it's AI. And the idea is, well, AI is incorruptible.
Looks human.
It's a digital screen, right? It's like just an AI construct of
what?
A person, a woman who is dressed in traditional Armenian garb.
Very, very satanic, but okay.
Yeah. And the idea behind this is that AI is incorruptible. Humans are evil. We're corruptible. AI is like an angel, you know, an angelic being beyond sin. And so you would want to have AI, you know, be responsible for cleaning out society's corruption. That's, God knows what's going to come of that. But so Armenia's, especially since the Soros like color revolution back in 2018, has been behaving very, very strangely, selling off, you know, a big chunk of the once Russian led Zangezur corridor. That compromises clearly one of the middle corridor, the Belt and Road that goes from China, Pakistan, the Caspian would be included in that, and onward into Azerbaijan, Armenia, Turkey, and Europe. That's something that is no longer in necessarily the hands of Russia and China as it once was, though Pakistan is joining, which is interesting that Pakistan is very much pro-China and pro-Russia, though there is U.S. military controls of Pakistan too, which is a problem. It was used back in the day to fund international Islamicism. So we don't fully know how reliable Pakistan is, but the fact that Pakistan is now part of a new deal between Armenia, Azerbaijan, Turkey, and Pakistan might be a point of protection, maybe, of the middle corridor. But you were bringing up Kazakhstan, which is sort of like right at the heart of this Eurasian integration as something which, I mean, they're a member of the Eurasian Economic Union. Kazakhstan is, you know, it's led by Russia. It's not the European Union. It's the Eurasian Economic Union. Though again, they also suffered their own color revolution attempts back in 2021. nearly overthrew Kazakhstan, right?
Well, they did overthrow at 2022. They did overthrow. There was a coup and then a counter. I think it was a coup and then a counter coup, something like that.
Yeah, I got a little confused by that one, eh?
Yeah. But I mean,
right.
my understanding is that was some sort of. I mean, reading into it, it looks like that was some sort of a cleansing of like getting rid of whatever embedded elements there were to clean out the government. That was Putin backing that. Putin was backing getting rid of moles, I guess.
Yeah, it seemed like a positive coup in that sense.
Yeah. It was like a benevolent coup, I guess you'd call it, because I do think the people who originally were in power are back in power, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, yeah, that was 2021, 2022. And backing up a few minutes, Nick No is the one who really put that on my radar. If you're familiar with him, he's the Extortion 17 whistleblower, the one who blew the whistle on the Chinook helicopter full of SEALs. The same SEAL team that went in to kill Osama bin Laden was then killed in a really sketchy operation that they should have never been in. Like a few months later. Yeah, he's the one who the intelligence analyst who blew the whistle on all that. And so I've had him on my show. He's been on John and Zach's show, and he seems to think that Kazakhstan coup was a cleansing of like it was Putin doing that. He also put on my radar that again, I don't have any sauce on this, but the Erdogan assassination attempt that he survived was Putin helping him. That the way he explained it was that when Erdogan was flying in his plane, the Turkish Air Force that was escorting him, those fighter pilots tried to force him to the ground, like to land at an airport in another country where he was going to be arrested, and Russian fighter jets like intercepted them and then escorted Erdogan's plane to a safe airport. That's what Nick No said. Again, I don't have any sauce on it, and that hasn't been reported publicly as far as I could tell. But interesting anecdote if that ends up being true. And it certainly aligns with what I've seen publicly, because I do think ultimately what the play is here is like when we talk about a war between Israel and Iran, the real play is to get a war between Iran and Turkey, because if they can get Iran to attack Turkey, then that initiates Article 5, and then that brings NATO into the Middle East against Putin, because Putin and Iran are very tight at this point, right? So I think that's what the play is, and that's why this meeting with Erdogan tomorrow is so critical, because if you look at Trump's announcement, this is Trump announcing it last week. He says, "I am pleased to host President Recep Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey at the White House on September 25th. We are working on many trade and military deals with the president, including the large-scale purchase of Boeing aircraft, a major F-16 deal, and a continuation of the F-35 talks, which we expect to conclude positively. President Erdogan and I have always had a good relationship. I look forward to seeing him on the 25th. And what's important here is I went on and on about the F-35s, but it sounds like they're definitely getting F-16s. And if you look at what the F-16 is, I just know from my childhood, my older brother was obsessed with aircraft. And so tangentially, I learned a lot about aircraft from him. The F-16 is like a very small fighter jet. It's the world's most common fixed wing aircraft in military service, with over 2,000 operational right now. But it was originally designed as an air superiority day fighter. So, which means it is meant for air-to-air dogfighting. So if you have planes flying overhead that are trying to establish air superiority like we have in Syria with Israel, this would be the plane that you would scramble first to deter that. And so while it might be many years before they actually receive an F-35, they could receive F-16s next week. So this might actually be the plane that, like, the F-35 narrative, I think, would be very disruptive to Netanyahu and like his speech on Friday. But getting this plane, this is the plane that I think actually would be the one you would fly over Syria to stop the IDF. Now, going back to Kazakhstan, this is the story that you're talking about. Trump unveils $4 billion. This is on Monday. Trump unveils a $4 billion locomotive deal with Kazakhstan as Kazakh president meets with U.S. envoy, Meta vice president. U.S. President hails the, quote, largest railroad equipment purchase in history after a phone call with Kazakh leader Tokayev, who also stresses strategic partnership with Washington. And Trump says, quote, they have the ATM to try it for my.
Sorry. Yep.
They have signed the largest railroad equipment purchase in history, $4 billion worth of United States locomotives and rail equipment. We need to support our U.S. rail industry, which has been attacked by fake environmentalists for years. He reaffirmed Kazakhstan's commitment. The president of Kazakhstan reaffirmed Kazakhstan's commitment to advancing the Kazakh-American strategic partnership, emphasizing the country's role as Washington's main economic partner in Central Asia. And what's interesting about that is that when you go back to Trump's Truth Social, and I hate how he always wants to do that to me, he also puts out right before, or right after rather,
I don't see the Truth Social on the screen, by the way.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm trying to pull it up.
Okay.
Let me pull it up on my right screen. I'm not logged in on Truth Social on Brave, and so whenever I try to share it, it just wants to go to the login screen.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So right here, it's 2 days ago. Right here. That's 3 days. There it is. Okay, so it was after all the Charlie Kirk stuff. This is hilarious. I don't know if you saw the Venezuela thing, but that was hilarious. And
is that a militia in Venezuela?
He says, top secret, we caught the Venezuelan militia in training, a very serious threat. And watch the video.
Oh my God. Oh no. That is pretty funny.
Well, and I talked about this on my show yesterday. What's even better about it is that, the official narrative against Maduro is that the people in Venezuela are starving, and that's why he's a dictator. Because everyone while I think it's Trump being goofy and like being Trump, he's also like kind of revealing the people in Venezuela are not starving, and maybe that's all just a lie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Clearly.
So here it is. Here's the Kazakhstan post about the U.S. rail industry. The very next one is earlier this month, and this is him revealing something that happened earlier this month. Earlier this month, I spoke with the highly respected president of Uzbekistan. Today, I want to congratulate President Mirziyoyev on signing a great deal with Boeing worth over $8 billion. Uzbekistan Airways is purchasing 22,787 Dreamliners. That's an insane amount of airplanes.
Wow.
This will create over 35,000 jobs in the U.S. He is a man of his word, and we will continue to work together on many more items. Thank you for your attention to this matter. What's interesting about that is I was talking about this part of the world on my show back in June. I pulled the clip of it and posted it. But I was going back to Zbigniew Brzezinski's Grand Chessboard and how like the unlikely alliance in 1998 that could stop the New World Order would be Iran, China, and Russia. So just playing around on my show, I drew a line from the capitals of those three countries, and of course, right in the center of that is Kazakhstan geographically, and just south of Kazakhstan is Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan is important because that's been our best ally in Central Asia. That's where we launched the war in Afghanistan in 2005. Whenever we went into 2003, whenever we went into Afghanistan.
I thought that was because it was 2003 was Iraq.
2003 was Iraq.
Right away.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe it was 2007. Maybe it was 2007 we went into Afghanistan. Okay. Anyway, it was 20 years ago. But we launched the war in Afghanistan from Uzbekistan. So they're like an old U.S. ally. But Kazakhstan is important because there's a lot of pipelines running through there. There's a lot of railroad running through there. It's the connection between Russia and China. I mean, China and Russia share this tiny little border right here. And they obviously share the border up here north of North Korea. But this is this passage between the two mountains. That's the passage that the Mongolians rode through 800, 900 years ago, the Golden Horde, when they took over Europe, right?
Yeah.
So this is a very critical piece of geography here. And Putin and Xi have been signing deals for the past several months to strengthen that border and run more infrastructure back and forth through Kazakhstan. And then last week, to like kind of put a punctuation on all this, Putin put out this narrative, and let me see where this one. Putin signs off on Europe's largest ever high-speed rail project. It was from September 17th. The new transportation network will span 4,500 kilometers, which is 2,800 miles. And the trains will be capable of reaching speeds of 250 miles an hour. And so the network will connect Moscow with Minsk, Adler on the Black Sea, Ekaterinburg in the Urals, Ryazan, and other cities. So 2,800 miles of new rail. It's going to be the largest high-speed rail system in Europe, because Russia is technically a European country. And when you couple this with the Alaska summit, which lots of speculation about a bridge across the Bering Strait, like a rail bridge, and then the deal in Kazakhstan, and then you couple that with the SCO deal, and what the speculation was about what's going on between Azerbaijan and Iran, and how there's this rail system that Putin has been building. I think Le Monde was the one that was pushing that. Where's that Le Monde article? I don't think I have it handy, but that whole thing, I think, is signal that we might see a rail system that's built that connects Florida and the East Coast of the United States, even like South America, to Africa and Europe through one giant rail system that goes across the Bering Strait into Alaska, from Russia down to Korea, China, Kazakhstan, around the Caspian Sea, the Middle East, through Egypt and into Africa. I think that's the golden age right there. If that actually happens, and that represents, to your point, the point that you've been making on this show for a very long time, is in the 19th century, it was these rail projects that got these countries, specifically Russia and the United States, to work together on like a joint venture that benefited both countries. And now we're seeing that happen again. And all these other countries have been doing this in Asia and the Middle East for a while now. But now finally you're seeing Trump step in and say, yeah, we're actually doing this rail. Not only is it a rail deal, but it's the largest railroad equipment deal in history.
And could this be
Kazakhstan of all places?
Could this be possibly antagonistic to China and China's role within the Belt and Road Initiative, perhaps? Because I was wondering as well about the words, at least. I don't know if there's actions about reoccupying the Basram Air Base in Afghanistan.
Yeah,
that Trump had made. Is he serious? And is it really, if he is serious, is it really because of the words he's using to provide for better strike capabilities onto China's defense systems in Xinjiang and places that are pretty close to Afghanistan, or what? Yeah. So is it possible that there might be a stupid idea that threatens the Chinese involvement and the China-Russia special relationship that Zbigniew Brzezinski was so afraid of within this context? Like, is Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, are they liabilities more than beneficiaries or reliable partners in this? Or what do you think of that?
Well, I think that's actually a really good point. That's something to bring up because, going back to Chris Paul and Bernie Bright's theory of drafting, using the old movie Days of Thunder, the Tom Cruise movie about NASCAR, and how like Tom Cruise explains that you save power in your engine by drafting behind the car in front of you, and then you wait until the very last minute in the race, and you pull around the car in front of you because you have extra power in your engine, and then you win the race. But the whole time you're drafting behind the car in front of you, and it looks like the car in front of you is actually the winner. Politically, we've been using that as an analogy to describe what a lot of the stuff Trump does, because it looks like he's doing like a neocon, like he's drafting off the momentum of the New World Order. He's drafting off the momentum of the World Economic Forum. He's drafting off the momentum of what was already in place with the Great Reset and the Zionist Greater Israel Project and all this stuff. But then it's always at the last minute, there seems to be like a rug pull where it just goes a different direction. And the signal I think that I look for is the lip service and then the actual like signed deals. The lip service would be, threatening the Taliban with retaking Bagram Air Base. We want Bagram Air Base so we can bomb Xi in China, right? The signal, I think, is the signed deal with Kazakhstan that they're going to purchase $4 billion or $8 billion, whatever it is, $4 billion, $8 billion worth of stuff, rail equipment. Now, you sell that idea if you're Trump to the neocons with what you just said. This is how we disrupt the SCO. This is how we disrupt the China-Russia relationship, is by getting a foothold in Kazakhstan and then using Kazakhstan as a wedge between China and Russia. But as we just discussed earlier, Kazakhstan seems to be firmly under the control of Putin. And if these guys, the neocon analysts at the State Department were using their brains, which they never do, they would be able to figure that out. Like, oh yeah, well, Kazakhstan is actually like firmly under the control of Putin. You can see all the meetings he's been hosting since 2017 in Astana, where he's inviting Iran and Turkey and China and all these other people, because there's other people attending those meetings besides the Iran and Turkey. But he's doing it in Kazakhstan. He's not doing it in Moscow. All of that, I think, like, is signal to me. That's all signal. And again, if you look at the topography of that whole region in Central Asia, the best place, as far as I can tell, like having never surveyed it myself personally, this is the best place to build a railroad. Is Kazakhstan. It's nice. I mean, look at that mountain range.
It's the secret
right
sauce that ties the entire Eurasian partnership together. It definitely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's why the color revolutionary crowd was so obsessed with destabilizing it before 2022, because it's right, the underbelly, right, the ripe underbelly of Russia, China, especially, and the core of the Silk Road. This is the historic Silk Road corridors right there. So yeah, if they're on board, I mean, that's the thing. I think that you made the good point, is to see action, not words. And what we see, that this is a potentially very good deal. $4 billion on rail equipment is really important. Yeah, it's huge. It's just massive. My God, so big.
Well, but again, like I show you this because this is the real relative
Russia.
size of Russia. It's actually not as big as it looks on the map I was just showing. Like, it's actually
it's true. Yeah.
It's actually much smaller than you think. You look at it on these maps where it gets distorted and it looks massive.
That's right. And Kazakhstan's about the size
it's not that much bigger than
Mexico.
The United States.
Yeah, no, it's true.
And then Kazakhstan's tiny. Kazakhstan's like the size of Mexico.
Yeah, about that, eh?
Yeah.
So to take note of these positive deals, Uzbekistan too, be curious on an economic level, and then also to see with Russia and China, what about the deals there? Because I know that Kazakhstan had like a $24 billion energy deal with China that they signed not that long ago. Are those deals also enhancing at the same time? Is their partnership with Russia and with the USA also improving, or are we seeing a deterioration on one and an improvement on the other? So these are the sorts of things that I think I'm going to be paying much more attention to this going forward. I was asking just because I was looking at the case of Nepal a lot recently. What's that? Kazakhstan forges deals with Russia and China. That's exactly. That's not that long ago either. That's June 17th, 2025. Fantastic.
Yep.
So
and look, Rosatom again.
Yeah,
that's that same company that has been popping up every single time we look at remember, they were the ones that I think are implicated in the whole Italian funding Matteo in Italy, right? They were the ones that were allegedly laundering money to create this populist political movement in Italy in 2017.
Yeah, so exactly. It's a very interesting thing. And that Rosatom is super proficient at building the things that America used to build, these big, large-scale reactors that America was great at once upon a time. We stopped building back in like 1983. Our nuclear power sector was just shriveled up by design by these Malthusians, whereas Russia, China, I think something like 75% of the nuclear reactors under construction in the world today are being led by Russia and China. India is number 3. But, that's such an important capability. And if what Trump was saying at the UN pertaining to the fraudulence of the man-made global warming pseudoscience, which is destroying any country that adopts it as an economic or foreign policy, the only way you're going to break out of that is nuclear power. You need to have that type of high quality energy that's very, very it's independent. It'll always work independent of whether the sun's out or whether there's wind blowing or, who's controlling whatever geopolitical hotspot that oil or natural gas is being extracted. All of these points of instability in what we currently typically think of when we think of energy baskets, you don't have that really with nuclear energy, especially 3rd, 4th generation. And it gets you closer to fusion. So, yeah, if you can get that type of US, Russia, China alliance that also brings in Kazakhstan on energy and transport together at the same time, then the world is going to become very bright. I was a little bit worried, and I'm still a little bit worried because of what I'm seeing in some of the National Endowment for Democracy active operations right now that just overthrew the government of Nepal and inserted a technocratic government there. The hands of the NED was all over the place. Same thing, destabilizations around China's perimeter in Cambodia, in Philippines, underway as well. Indonesia. So these are all things that I'm like, got on my radar too, but hopefully this better, healthier current of cooperation wins the day. Gordon, we've surpassed the second hour of today's show. I know.
We went long today. It's also worth like I'm pulling up rants, but it's also worth noting that Kazakhstan is the world's leading producer of uranium.
That's very useful to keep that in mind.
That's where the majority of uranium comes from, which, most people think of uranium and they're like, oh, well, nuclear bombs, but it's also used in nuclear energy. Kind of crazy that they don't have their own nuclear energy program. Like the country that provides the world with nuclear energy doesn't have nuclear energy itself. Right. Yeah. Wild. But it makes sense now that that they're going to get that nuclear energy program. So,
yeah. No, I think that's such an important data point. I might even write an article about this. This is so fascinating. Let's do this. I'm going to play the last ad for today, and you could pull up, see if there's any rants or anything like that should be read, and we'll get back to that right after this ad. This is deodorant.
Deodorant should do more than cover you up. It should protect you all day long.
Dude, the deodorant stick is legit. I like the mint one. And, you go work out and you kind of get you get funky if you work out. Dude, like at the end of my workout, like I'm sweating, shirt got all those sweat. I'm like, dude, I still smell good. Like I absolutely love it. If you guys haven't tried it, try it.
That's the difference with Soft Disclosure. No aluminum, no chemicals, just clean, natural ingredients that fight odor and keep you fresh through every workout, every meeting, every moment.
I've always struggled with the you can't use aluminum deodorant because you're going to die if you use it kind of thing, because all of the non-aluminum deodorant products suck pretty much. Yeah. This is different. This is all day. You're all day good, and you're not putting any of that disgusting chemicals right near your lymph nodes.
Soft Disclosure deodorant, real protection, real freshness, built on truth. Available in mint and lemon grapefruit. Visit softdisclosure.com and use promo code Badlands for 15% off.
Soft Disclosure. Yeah, and I'm just looking here online too on September 15th, right after the SCO summit, coverage on Radio Free Europe. That's a CIA front, but they still had to admit China continues its steady expansion into Central Asia, and they go over the $15 billion of deals.
Radio Free?
Radio Free Europe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Never mind. There's something else that I think Radio Free was connected to something that had to do in Utah with the Charlie Kirk assassination, but I might be mixing up my names now.
Yeah. But they were saying here that they covered the deals signed, $15 billion worth, 70 new commercial deals between Beijing and Kazakhstan on transport corridors, petrochemicals, gas projects, logistics hubs, and digital tech. And that's on top of the nuclear deal that you just pointed out from June earlier of this year between China and Kazakhstan. So yeah, very, very fascinating stuff. And then also I'm going to do a little collection of the deals with Russia on top of that, just to have the US, Russia, and China deals with Central Asian economies. I want to have a mapping in my mind over the last couple of years. Or especially the last year.
I'll send you this Le Monde article from November, because you should
you
should look at that too. That one between that it accuses Putin of orchestrating the deals between Azerbaijan and Iran, and getting the southern Caspian Sea portion of the railroads built. So yeah, that's really interesting. Cool. Yeah, man. We have a rant from Donnie Double, $10, my favorite tandem. Well, thank you, Donnie. Appreciate that. Everyone, please hit the thumbs up, and we will see y'all next week. Keep an eye this week, tomorrow, on the meeting with Erdogan, between Trump and Erdogan, and then Friday, I'm probably going to do like a special, depending on what time he does it. Netanyahu speaks. There'll probably be a Badlands special coverage of it that I'll try to host if it's not during my show.
Awesome. All right, cool. This was fun. Thank you, Gordon, and thank you everybody for joining us. And tune back in next week, or actually tune back into everything Gordon's going to do in the coming days ahead. And we'll be joining back here again next week to discuss breaking history.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.